Bernard, an artist, author, and spiritual experiencer. Welcome to Call Me Zena, a true story into the spiritual realms. Join me as I sit and discuss the journey of self-discovery and awakening with the help of my spirit guides. It's time to trust your intuition. This is your inner knowings. Through questions and points of conversation, I can help others feel empowered. With the ability to touch people's past lives, I help others connect and not feel alone. Sit with me and call in live, 888-994-4995.
Well, good afternoon and welcome to Call Me Zena, starring Sally Bernard. Obviously, I'm not Sally. I'm her oft-spoken about fiance, Steve, and we'll be talking about some of our past and present and future and how we got to this point. And with me today is also Lynn Everard, who's been working closely with Sally on the revision of her book, and he'll be doing the editing and book development there. But I'd like to start off by telling you some things about the history of Sally and I. We met over 22 years ago at work, and we were friendly. Sally was great at her job. She was a great salesperson. And then we went our separate ways and met up again in the end of 2011. And we dated for the first time. And Sally was going through her metamorphosis, so to speak, and I probably was not ready to hear some of the things that Sally was talking to me about, and we had a couple of months together and went our separate ways again. But in February of this year, we had occasion to speak again, had lunch, and we've been inseparable ever since, and next month we'll be getting married. So that's a short history and bringing you up to date on what's going on with Sally and I. You might see some pictures on the screen of a vacation that Sally and I just were on, and there'll be a lot of food in these pictures because we did a lot of eating, because that's what you do on a cruise. But getting back to my involvement in Sally's life today, so many things have happened that we call naturalies that have brought me into Sally's world, so to speak, and into the world of a higher dimension. I've learned a lot about what Sally has gone through, and I've learned a lot about her guide here on Earth, Aldo, or Adamir, as she says, refers to him in her book. And so many things have happened that cannot be considered coincidence. One being that the day that Aldo passed was on my birthday of last year. Now, some might say that that's a coincidence, but I think it's what we call a naturally. He passed on my birthday for some reason, and we'll figure that one out. One other thing that happened that I'd like to share with you, and that is Sally has a spirit guide by the name of White Feather, who is a Hopi Indian, and Sally had a white feather on a coffee table in the house. And one evening we were getting ready to go out to dinner, and I walked into where Sally was getting ready, and we were talking, and all of a sudden something hit my head, and I put my hand out like this, and a white feather came out of nowhere into the palm of my hand. And Sally, of course, got her famous goosebumps that she always refers to, and she explained to me about white feather, and from then on, nothing was coincidence to me. Everything was a naturally. So it's very interesting all of the things that have happened, and I'll share some of them with you, but I was really scheduled to be on this show next week, where Sally and I were going to discuss some of these things. So I'd like to introduce my guest today, Lynn Everard, who's working with Sally on the revision of her book. And I'd like to ask you, Lynn, can you tell us some of the things that you've learned about Sally and her experiences and what she's gone through since she began this new chapter in her life?
Well, the amazing thing is that, as you know, she published her first book in 2008. And she had gone through a lot up to that point, but her journey was far from done. And so she wanted to do a few changes to the book and bring it up to date. But as we started talking, there was so much for her to share, so many things that she'd experienced, so many areas of transformation in her life, that it started to become really clear to me that this wasn't just an update of the book, but it was basically a rewrite of the book. Because as significant, as important as the events were leading up to 2008, some amazing things have happened since then, because through her growth, her spiritual journey, she has developed these gifts of hers at a much deeper level. And so it was really important, I felt, that we retell the story from the beginning up until now. And it doesn't mean that she's done with her journey, with her transformation now. It just means that it'll get us up to somewhere around the point of the end of 2022. And then at that point, we'll take what we have and actually do what probably will be called the second edition of the book.
Okay. Yeah, Sally is very excited about the project, and of course she would be telling you herself, except for we came home from vacation and she has a severe case of laryngitis, so that's why I'm here. But hopefully everyone will continue to tune in every Monday at 3 o'clock for the actual Call Me Zena. What would you say is the most interesting thing you've learned about Sally to date?
Well, I think so. I can't limit it to just one, but I'll try to limit it to a few.
Okay.
I think one of them is you mentioned Aldo, or Adamir in the book, and you know our approach to the revision of the book has been that I interview her, I ask her questions, and then I record everything, and then I have a program I use to create a transcription to put all the audio into words in a Word document. So when I first started, I felt like I was having to come up with the questions. But very quickly, I got the sense that I was being guided in what questions to ask her during this process, because there would be some questions I would ask her and she would get those goosebumps and she'd feel his presence. And then I started feeling his presence. And so the way that we're approaching this is that I'm supporting her in this rewrite, this revision or second edition of the book. But there's just such a bigger story to tell about all the different things that happen. And then we've discovered our past life connection through the process of this as well. And as you said earlier, there are no coincidences, right? There are just things that were meant to happen. We just don't control when they're going to happen.
Yeah, Sally and I are sure that we've had a past life experience together. We just haven't been able to figure out which life and where and what we were. But,
right. But just the willingness to be open to ask the question, right? To to say, I really feel like we had a past life together. Now I'm going to be as patient. We're going to be as patient as we can and allow that to filter through. Right? And at some point, maybe when you least expect it, one of you will have an aha moment. Or maybe you'll have a dream, or maybe you'll have something else where all of a sudden it just dawns on you where it came from, where it was, when it was, and how it happened.
Well, speaking of aha moments, those people who know me would tell you that me being accepting of Sally's story and her psychic abilities and her medium abilities and empath abilities is not something that I normally would have accepted years ago. So that's why Sally and I never developed early on. But I went through a total life change myself, and I was ready.
Yeah.
And that's the important thing. If you're not ready, you can't accept. But I was absolutely ready, and I look forward to every day and every new experience with Sally. So
Yeah,
wonderful.
and that sense of readiness and a sense of acceptance is so important, because when we feel accepted, by a person who's ready, then we're free to allow those things to come out of us, right? And to share what's really going on inside of us, and to share those gifts and those moments, and how it looks like it's all put together. And so that creates such a powerful basis on which to grow and develop your relationship, because there's so much, I'll use the word magic, but there's whatever you want to call it, there's so much power there, right? There's so much power and potential, and seeing the potential come to life through the power of that acceptance and that willingness to be open on your part, right? That you don't know what she's going to say next, but you're willing to be open to hear it. And then that also starts to resonate within you, and where you were years ago, where that wasn't something that you were comfortable with. It wasn't where you were in the course of your life, right? So then it didn't work, it didn't fit at that point in time. But now that you've gone through some of your own transformation and evolution, now you're able to actually meet her in that space and be able to listen to what she has to say.
Right. And Sally is constantly finding some prose by a gentleman, I believe his name is Mike Harrington, that it seems like he's peering into our lives on a daily basis with all of the prose that Sally finds and reads to me, and about the awakened woman or the awakened man and the interaction between the two. And in fact, we got his permission to have one of his pieces read at our wedding, and it'll be so apropos.
Oh. That's great.
Yeah, so we're looking forward to this next chapter in our lives. And they say you're never too old to be happy, so we're going to take that and run with it to its fullest extent.
I want to ask you about that. Getting married later in life. Different expectations than when you get married when you're younger?
Oh, beyond the shadow of a doubt, Dawn. When you get married younger, you have the pressures of building a career, raising a family, and things can oftentimes go askew. But later in life, when you don't have those obligations, I mean, they're loving obligations nonetheless, but you don't have those pressures, you can just concentrate on what makes the two of you happy, what you can find a direction that you want your relationship to go in, and do the things that make you happy. So yes, it's very, very different.
A different feeling.
A very different feeling. you know, we love each other, and you know, I loved my former wife, and she's probably listening today. I didn't say it just because of that, but this is different. This is very, very different.
And when you reconnected in February, you told me you got engaged by May.
Yes.
So did you just know at that point that this was it?
I knew very quickly that this was going to be real. And so many things happened at the very beginning. Even our first date together, if you want to call it a date, it was lunch, because Sally was going through something in her life. Well, we've already spoken about it on the show. We had a nice tribute to Sally's daughter Louise, who passed in July. And so she was going through that turmoil of having to watch her daughter pass. And so I asked her to lunch, and it was right then at the lunch that things started to click. Sally wasn't really looking for a relationship, but she said to herself, gee, if only a man would call me up and take me to a Jewish deli. That would be like the greatest thing that ever happened. And so I picked her up, and she hadn't told me this before, and we went to lunch at a Jewish deli. So that was Sally's first sign that, uh-oh, maybe something is here. And then I told her that I would call her, and we'd go out the following weekend. And I called her that night, and we went out the next day, and the day after that, and the day after that, and we became inseparable. Unfortunately, I do have to travel a bit for work, but we've been inseparable, and it's just been a wonderful time. And I knew I was going to ask her to marry me on a little 2-night vacation we took to Key West in May. I didn't have a ring, and it would have been tacky to ask her without a ring. And we passed the jewelry store on Duval Street in Key West, and I still hadn't dawned on me, gee, jewelry store rings. I asked her if she would want a little memento from our trip to Key West, and she said, oh, thank you, that'd be wonderful. We walked in, and then I saw the engagement rings out of the corner of my eye, and I said, well, instead of a memento, how about an engagement ring? She said, what?
Aww.
And so then I let her pick it out, and then I got down on one knee and put the ring on her finger, and she said yes. So.
You know, you guys show that it's never too late or too late to even kindle a long-term romance and be happy.
That's absolutely correct. And because we had been friends before, I mean, we weren't, you know, close friends for a very long period of time, but we knew about each other. It made it very much easier to jump in, so to speak, and make things work.
It's amazing. Lynn, I have a question for you and Steve. Since Aldo passed on Steve's birthday, do you feel spiritually it was Aldo relinquishing his being Sally's guide over to Steve, saying, I know now you're it's going to make me cry, so yes, I hear you. I know now you're in good hands. It's okay for me to go.
Yeah, that's it sure feels that way. And when Sally told me that story, that's what it felt like to me, was that he knew that she'd be well taken care of, and that he had already given her, you know, so much of what he could give to her, and that he could still support her from a distance spiritually. But it's like he knew that Steve was coming in to take care of her in the physical sense, and it you know, it's funny because when we're doing our writing sessions, you know, I do get the sense that Aldo is at peace and is very excited to be supporting actually both of them. Both Sally and Steve in what's happening. And, you know, this is a level of love that I think most of us don't understand when we're in human form, but it is something that is it's the best part of us, whether we're in human form or spiritual form.
Steve, did you know Aldo?
I did not know Aldo. I knew of Aldo.
Everyone's commenting. Linda, your cousin, is commenting all over the place.
Well, my cousin Linda is more like my sister. In fact,
Nice.
I call her my sister cuz, and she's the sister I always wanted and never had.
Sally, I'm crying right there with you. She says, great question. I'm sitting here at home crying.
Yeah. Getting back to Aldo here for a second, Sally and I feel that Aldo is with us on many occasions, and Sally will get a revelation and do her famous "I have goosebumps," and then we might see a handprint on the sofa, and it's unmistakably, well, to Sally and to me, unmistakably Aldo, and not too many other people might agree with us, but
Well, I have to ask you, because Sally's very spiritual, and Lynn, we know, is very spiritual and believing in past lives. From what you tell me, this wasn't always who you were and what you believed in, and now here you are embracing a handprint that's not really there to the naked eye, and knowing that you now continue being Sally's guide where he left off. What does that feel like for you?
it's been, I don't want to say it's overwhelming, but it was, I use the word metamorphosis that I'm going through because I was not the type of person who would, accept things like Sally has gone through. But Sally and I have spent countless hours just sitting and chatting and deep, meaningful conversations and explanations of what she has gone through and the traveling and her past lives and things like that. And the more I heard, the more feasible it all was. And the more I heard, the more I wanted to know. So I kept asking. And that's one of the things that Sally and I, one of the things that cements our relationship is the fact that not only does Sally want to give, but she understands that I want to learn. So it's very important.
Lynn, do you feel that this is all part of this? There's so many things that I just want to say, but I can't have to ask you. Part of the spiritual journey that you're writing of Sally's book to reveal a lot of more in depth of what's happening?
Yes, because I think all the things that Sally has been through in her life, and it's not that she's the only person who's been through things, but a lot of us go through things, but we don't have the spiritual understanding of them. In other words, we're dealing with it as best we can from our limited human mind and our brain, and not necessarily from the bigger picture of what is really happening spiritually. Because everything that's happening in the unseen then becomes visible in the seen. And so that's why so what's happened even with Steve and Sally is there's been some kind of a union between their two souls that now brings them together physically. And that's the part I think that a lot of us miss, is that for a lot of people, the early relationships are about karma, clearing karma, going through all of these challenges that we face as humans because we are still looking for love outside of ourselves rather than realizing it's been in us all along. And the more we look for it outside of ourselves because we don't have it in ourselves, the more frustrated we get, the more relationships we have, the more failed relationships we have, and the more people we look at as not being able to meet our needs. But once we're able to meet our needs, and this requires not only some spiritual maturity, but some physical maturity as well. And I think as we get older and then we start opening ourselves to all of these spiritual concepts, we're able to take care of ourselves so that when two people like Steve and Sally join together, it's not because there's anything missing in either one of them. It's because they are celebrating their wholeness together.
And throughout my life, I was not one to be very spiritual, nor very religious. Not that the two go hand in hand. But I went through something starting in 2010 that opened me up to my spiritual self. And it's a continuing growth process. And I was ready. This process that I went through made me ready for what I'm experiencing now and my upcoming marriage to Sally. So maybe I'll get into that at a later date.
It's interesting how it changes and how, Lynn, you talk about spirituality opening you up to new things and new possibilities. So what are you and Sally looking forward to in your next stage in life?
Well, what we're really looking forward to is to be with friends and family on December 18th and make the bond that we've been planning and spending the rest of our lives together. We do have a lot of travel plans, things that I never really got to do before. And of course, we have another cruise coming up as a honeymoon. Wasn't supposed to be the honeymoon, but I booked it before we got engaged. So it turns out it's the honeymoon, but I feel I owe Sally another trip because it wasn't supposed to be the honeymoon. But we'll go Christmas week on a cruise, and then probably in the spring we're looking at London and Paris.
Wow.
And just definitely want to see where Sally spent the first part of her life.
Wow,
in London.
how amazing to go back and see where she grew up and everything.
Right.
That's amazing. What a nice trip that'll be.
Yeah.
That's incredible. That you truly show that love can conquer all and you never give up and it's never too late and age doesn't matter. I think that's a huge message.
Yes, and just some advice for the people who are out there thinking that it will never happen to them. It won't if you keep looking for it. It happens when you're not looking for it.
You weren't looking?
No, neither was Sally.
And Sally wasn't looking. Lynn, what do you think? You're shaking your head.
Yeah, I think it can happen anytime. I think there's a part of us as people where we need to understand and recognize that there may be aspects of us that are longing for that different kind of relationship. It doesn't mean that we're chasing it, right? It just means that in order to have it show up, we have to at least be open to it. But I think what you're saying is, if you're not looking for it, I think I would interpret that to mean that we're not chasing it, right? That we're not trying to hunt it down and capture it somehow, but that we're focused on living our lives to the fullest, and then that can show up because it is another aspect of living life to the fullest.
That's very true. I had no desire to become a hermit. So, but just the way that Sally and I came together was an issue of just an amazing thing in and of itself. So we'll talk about that at a future date. Okay, so I think we're going to take a break here for a minute. Don't go away, and we'll come back and we'll talk more with Lynn Everhart, and we'll talk about Sally. And next week, call me Zena.
A true story, Call Me Zena is the telling of Sally Bernard. Born in London, England at the end of the Second World War, she came to the U.S. in 1979. A mother of 2 and grandmother of 4, she settled in Florida and worked in real estate. While going through a difficult time in her life, she was admitted into a hospital overnight in December of 2005. While settling back into her life, she began having vivid dreams and documenting them. By the 3rd dream, a lady gave her a message to draw. With no artistic background or interest in art or history, Sally listened to her dreams and grabbed paper and crayons. Today, she has over 150 pieces of inspiring art and poetry. This book follows her journey and interpretations of these messages. She describes in detail how she's able to astral project and who she has met along her travels, including her spirit guides. This book will show you how anything is possible with an open mind. These events have changed Sally's life's direction, and this book will show you how to change yours. Purchase Call Me Zena on Amazon today.
This world, this life, this illusion. What is going on, we ask? What is happening? Why not take time and see what is happening? This world as we know it, it seems so real, and yet so far away from where we've come. Corruption, greed, anger, power, revenge. Please wake up. We can change what is around us. How, we may ask? Learn to go back to where we were. Then we will have the clues. Then we can change and go forward. Please take the time. Do not fall into the game which we have put upon ourselves. We can change. We can make a difference. We have the power, each and every one of us. Go in peace. Go with love. Go as one. Zena. You have been watching Call Me Zena with your host, Sally Bernard. As an artist, author, and spiritual experiencer, know that you could always seek me out for resources. Visit artbysallybernard.com today. Now, back to the show.
Well, welcome back to Call Me Zena. Again, obviously, I'm not Zena. I'm not Sally. I'm Steve, the oft-spoken about fiance. And I'm here with Lynn Everhard, who is writing the revision of Sally's book with her. And we were talking during the break, Lynn, about spirituality and how it manifests itself differently with different people. What would you say is your biggest take on spirituality and what it means to different people?
Well, it has different meanings for different people. I think one of the places where we get caught up sometimes is in trying to over-define it. And to me, this spirituality is about being alive. And we are, I'll just start with my belief system, which I know is a belief that Sally shares, is that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. And so part of our challenge is to merge the two together. And the temptation is to either be in one or the other. In other words, either being lost in our humanity and our ego and trying to fight battles that exist mainly in the mind, or to relax into our spirituality where we are able to then understand that there's a bigger picture than what we can see and that there's always something that has not yet revealed itself. And in working on Sally's book with her, one of the things that's really important for people, and again, part of my work and what's behind my work is I help people speak their truth. And one of the ways that people can speak their truth is to write it. And so when I work with people writing books, their truth of their life, of their spirituality, of their humanity then comes through the written word. And the written word is so packed with meaning and with possibility. And so going through this process with Sally, and I'm like I mentioned earlier, I'm recording it and then I'm doing the transcription. I have a program that does that for me. and then to really be able to get into the words and to present it that way, because when we read, we take things in and we process them in a different way than when we're hearing it. And when we read, typically, we can read a line again. We can read a paragraph again. We can go back and look at something again, whereas when we're having a conversation with someone, we might remember something later, but it goes so fast we can't stay in that moment, because typically when we're in conversation, we can keep moving the conversation forward. And so there may not really be time to reflect at the level necessary to really get what we've just been discussing with another person.
Well, I agree, and the written word is very, very powerful, and one book comes to mind that opened me up to spirituality, and that's The Shack, and I forget the name of the author, but it taught me forgiveness, not just forgiving other people, but the fact that you must forgive yourself before you can forgive other people, and that opened me up to a whole other world once I freed myself of any burdens that I was carrying. Forgiveness is very powerful, and I believe it's a precursor to spirituality. Do you agree with that?
Yes, forgiveness is incredibly important, and one of the things I've discovered is that forgiveness is really about us, right? It's like we think we're forgiving someone else, but it's about us forgiving ourselves for whatever role we had and whatever we think happened. Because a lot of times there are events that happen, but those events are neutral until we assign a meaning to them. And typically what happens is that the event happens, we look to assign a meaning to it, but then there's something that happens right after that we're not always aware of, which is we have a tendency as humans to make a judgment about the meaning. The meaning is neither here nor there, but it's okay. But the minute we assign a judgment to the meaning, then we assign a judgment to the players who participated in the event. And now we've got something to forgive. And so it's not just about forgiving them, it's about forgiving ourselves, because oftentimes we're the ones who made up the story about the event. And so part of what I've been learning recently is that what's really important is that if we do the forgiveness process in ourselves, but we don't reclaim our innocence as those newborn children who have never done anything wrong, if we don't reclaim that innocence, we leave room for guilt and shame to begin to grow. And it's when the guilt and shame grow, we forgive ourselves a million times, but it never takes, because we haven't gotten rid of the guilt and shame. And so we keep coming back to it, we don't let it go. Mm-hmm. So going back to this idea of the power of the written word, is that it stays with us typically a little longer. When I watch something, I often take notes, because if I speak something, if I hear something, right, that's one element of learning. Mm-hmm. And then if I write it down, that's another element of learning. And then if I can speak it myself, that's another element of learning. So if I hear it, write it, and say it, then I'm in a really good spot to have actually learned something.
And in Sally's case, in taking that brush and putting it on canvas, is her way of writing it. And
yes, well, and she's gifted in so many different ways, right? Because she can use the brush on the canvas. She writes poetry. There's poetry in the book already. She's able to speak, obviously, and then she's able to hear messages that come through her. So she's actually expressing truth in a lot of different ways. And one of the biggest challenges we have as human beings is that when our truth is not fully expressed, we feel bottled up. So that's why it's so important that when you and Sally got back together or found each other this current time, that you were open to hearing her truth, because now she could be fully expressed with you. And if we're not fully expressed with someone, we ultimately don't feel safe with them, and we don't speak our truth to them, and it creates a relationship that is just ready to explode, in the sense that we hold all the stuff in, and then it's like the volcano that erupts, and all that truth that we've been holding in comes out, and we can destroy things with that, including relationships. So that creating that safe space for the communication is so, so important.
Right. And, you know, I've never had a relationship with a piece of art before, but the painting behind me, which I call the Dragons, is the first piece of art that I've ever considered I had a relationship with. I mean, I've even named the characters. This is Nigel, and that's Beatrix, and Chauncey's the kid, and people might think I'm crazy for saying that, but I have an actual relationship with this painting. And Sally's work is so intricate. And the amazing part of it is when I came into Sally's life this time and I saw that painting, she had never seen that painting the way I see it. And now she does.
Yeah.
And I'm sure many people look at her artwork and see it in different ways, both spiritually and other ways. The enjoyment factor is different for a lot of people.
Right. One of the things that's so fascinating about her early work, the drawings, right, was that she was drawing things, but it appeared that Aldo was actually interpreting them for her and telling her what she had drawn.
Right.
Because she didn't know.
She drew things from other periods, from past lives, that she could not have drawn from anything but memory. And coats of arms of reigns in Europe and early 13th, 12th, 13th century settings, and but there they are on canvas or on paper with pen, and yes, Aldo did explain all of it to her.
Right.
And the amazing thing is that she was able to do it as if she were doing it looking at that setting. But she will be the first one to tell you she never knows what she's putting on canvas, and it just happens, which makes that part of Sally even that more amazing.
Well, it's fascinating because, we hear about, because when she's doing her show and people ask her a question, she's basically channeling the answer for them, right? But even beyond that, her drawing was a form of channeling. Her artwork is a form of channeling, and as it is with a lot of artists, people who write music, people who write songs, there's so much channeled information, so much channeled wisdom, and wisdom with, the beautiful thing about music and words set to music is you have the wisdom of the words with the emotion created by the music. It creates a very, very powerful experience for people.
Do you think, Steve, that you and Sally are connected spiritually in a past life?
I do. We've spoken about it on many occasions. We have not yet been able to put those thoughts into real dimension. since I was never a real believer in past lives, the whole thing is very new to me. But I get the sense that we have been together before. I don't know where. Neither does Sally at this point.
What does it feel like to have, I guess, a spiritual awakening, to open up to new ideas that you never felt before?
Oh, it's truly one of the most powerful feelings that I've ever had in my life. Again, those who know me would tell you that this is not something that I could possibly be a part of. You know, I'm a cut and dry steak and potatoes guy, you know. But to open me up into the realm of the reality that Sally has invited me into and has taught me many lessons about, it's just truly one of the most enlightening and amazing feelings that I've ever had in my life.
What are one of the top lessons that she's taught you, that you've learned?
Putting me on the spot, aren't you? Yeah. I think one of the biggest lessons is that to be with a woman like Sally, you have to be able to communicate with Sally on a particular level and love Sally on a particular level that makes her continue to want to be the woman of your life. And it's hard for me to put into words. I'm fishing for the right words here. But she's constantly showing me that we're the right couple because of the way I respond to her, the way she responds to me. I'm not talking in a physical sense, I'm talking about in an everyday sense. If we were not right for each other, I would not listen to her and accept what she has to say as easily as I do. So she's taught me acceptance, and in that acceptance, the love grows greater.
She's so amazing. I wish she were here, but I know she's watching and she's crying. But Lynn, I have to ask you, for Sally to have, I always say, a walking guide, an earth guide in this world, she had to have been someone pretty amazing spiritually. Not that everyone isn't, but to another level that the realm, as I call it, needed to protect her. And then they handed her off to Steve once Aldo couldn't be here anymore. Do you feel that's true?
Absolutely. Yeah, I believe that we all have people looking out for us. We all have spirit guides. We have, or we can call them guardian angels, whatever you want to call them. And their job is to watch over us and take care of us. And it's the only job they have. For someone like Aldo to be able to let go at that point, he hasn't completely let go. He's still in the picture, especially helping us complete the work on Sally's book. But there's just this part of it that it's clear to me anyway, and it's not like this happened with our first work session, but I would say maybe halfway through the second or third session, everything seemed to shift in the sense that I was feeling what she was feeling. I was feeling the presence of Aldo. We were both feeling the presence of other people as well that were there to support us. And I think if most of us only knew how much support we have that we're not aware of and that we can't see, we would look at our lives so differently. But in answer to your question, Dawn, yes, I believe that we have free will, but there's also a master plan. And somehow those things fit together. I don't know how. I don't know if I'll ever know how. But I believe that they fit together. And So Aldo could feel like he could leave physicality because he knew that Steve was going to take care of Sally in physicality, in the material world.
Sally writes in, Aldo is definitely here with us. This show is not a coincidence.
And I absolutely believe that, because Sally will be the first one to tell you that nothing that happens with us is coincidence. But Sally understands that it's not just Sally teaching me. She learns from me as well in other directions. But in her teachings to me, she knows that she has to give me little bits at a time, because my head might explode if she gave me too much at one time. And that's probably true. But it's been a just joyful, joyous, amazing ride that I look forward to many years of learning what she has learned and giving her what I know.
What would you say to the naysayers who don't believe in past lives or second chance at love?
Well, let the naysayers think what they want. I'm happy. Sally's happy. We believe in what we believe in. Choose to come along with us or choose not to. We'll love you in either way. So, we know we can't swing other people into our way of thinking immediately, or will we try if we feel they're not receptive?
Is it difficult for you gentlemen to actually sit there as guys? Because I've been doing this business a real long time, and women seem to be more in tune to what's going on a different level. Do you find it surprising that more and more as you get involved with this, you're becoming, I mean, Lynn, I know you've been doing this a long time as well, but do you find that things have been changing recently towards what you're doing? Towards what you believe in?
Who are you addressing, Freddie?
Either one can answer that. Do you
Okay.
find that today you're more connected to something that you probably never thought about in the past?
Well, that should be obvious from the rest of the show, what I've been saying. But as far as physically being here, doing the show in front of a camera, it's not something I'm used to. Yes, I'm used to speaking in front of people, but not in front of the camera. And I was totally unprepared, and hopefully I'm winging it, doing a good job substituting for Sally today. But I want Sally back here next week.
But you're used to preparing and speaking to people.
Yes.
As a whole, okay.
Yeah.
In this subject matter, does it make it, are you more aware that all of a sudden you're doing something you never ever thought that you would be talking about? I mean, you're here, you're comfortable, you're delivering it marvelously, but it has to come from core belief.
Absolutely. It has to come from core belief, and my core beliefs have been altered over the last 10 or 11 years, and over the past year, dramatically so. So, yes, there's a huge core belief that didn't exist before.
And how do you think this is going to affect, moving forward, your life?
I see nothing but a wonderful life ahead of us. God willing, we are healthy. This can only be great. I look forward to learning more and sharing more with Sally about what I know and what I feel. And I don't think anything can make this experience any less important on any level in any way. We've never felt this way about anyone else.
That's pretty good. And Lynn, you have helped Sally now bring forth her book, and you've been at it for a couple of months now, I think. Yes? And do you feel that she's changed her path with what you know of her? She's changed her path towards the future?
I think she's always been on the same path, but as we go through our journey, we evolve. And so sometimes it looks like the path changes, but it may not be the path that changes, it's us that changes, or we're the ones who appear to change because we are stepping into new versions of ourselves as we go along that path. And so to someone looking from outside of us, it might look like we're on a different path, but we may be on the same path. It's just that we see ourselves in a new identity that we didn't have before, and so then it seems to make things look different.
So it's good. It should be for good reading, yes? She's going to write things that she says even to today that she's never thought about, and new experiences that are coming forward. It seems like that's coming forward because she's talking more about the past, dealing with it in the present for the future.
I think that the past helps us understand the present. And it's also really important because in order to appreciate what we have now, and I'm sure you can relate to this, Steve, in order to appreciate what we have now, it's important that we have something in our past that creates a contrast. Because if we didn't have something that contrasted where we are now, we'd never appreciate now, because it would just be the way it always was. And so almost everyone that I talk to has something in their life. Almost everyone I'm working with on a book has things in their life that really just, knock them around really significantly. And that was the impetus for them to learn and grow and become who they are now.
Interesting point.
That's very true. And in my life, I was not one to accept things as we're talking about today. Sally could not have been able to get through to me in this manner if this was 20 years ago or even 10 years ago. So because of things that I've been through in my life, it has forced me to grow, and it has allowed me to grow, and it has allowed me to open up to everything that I'm experiencing now. And it's very amazing and wonderful. Okay. So I hope you all tune in next week to Call Me Zena when Sally will be here. And the number to call in is 888-994-4995, Studio A, at 3 o'clock next Monday. Thank you for tuning in today, and have a pleasant week.
Coincidence or not, it's time to trust your intuition and knowings. Thank you for joining me through this journey of self-discovery and awakening with the help of my spirit guides. I'm Sally Bernard, and you can find my book, artwork, and contact through artbysallybernard.com. Join us next week